Récemment, bullies cut the quiet girl's hair. 24 hours later, they were begging for forgiveness. Elena Vasquez sat in the back corner of her chemistry class at Riverside High, her long black hair cascading over her textbook like a protective curtain. At 17, she was the kind of student teachers barely noticed, quiet, focused, and seemingly invisible to the social hierarchy that dominated teenage life. Her olive skin and delicate features would have made her beautiful if anyone had bothered to look past her oversized sweaters and downcast eyes, but Elena preferred it that way. Invisibility was safety. What her classmates didn't know was that Elena had spent the last 8 years training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under her uncle Miguel, a former UFC fighter who ran a small gym in the rougher part of town. Every evening, after school, she transformed from the meek girl in baggy clothes to a fierce competitor who could submit opponents twice her size. The discipline had given her confidence, but also taught her restraint. Violence should always be the last resort. Miguel had drilled into her. A true fighter protects others, never seeks conflict. Madison Pierce ruled Riverside High with the casual cruelty that came with privilege. Blonde, wealthy, and surrounded by an entourage of equally vapid followers, she had made tormenting the less fortunate into an art form. Her lieutenants, Jessica and Chloe, were more than happy to participate in whatever scheme their queen devised. They moved through the hallways like sharks scenting blood, always searching for their next victim. Elena had managed to avoid their attention for most of her junior year by keeping her head down and her mouth shut. She ate lunch alone in the library, took routes through less crowded hallways, and never drew attention to herself. It was a carefully constructed existence designed around one principle: don't give them a reason to notice you. The first crack in her armor came on a rainy Tuesday morning in the main hallway. Elena was rushing to her locker between classes when she accidentally bumped into Madison, causing the popular girl to drop her overpriced coffee. "Watch where you're going, freak," Madison snapped, her voice carrying across the crowded corridor. Other students stopped to watch, sensing drama. "I'm sorry," Elena mumbled, bending to help clean up the spilled drink. "Don't touch it with your dirty hands," Jessica interjected, pushing Elena back. "God knows what diseases you people carry." The racist undertone wasn't lost on Elena, but she bit her tongue. "Walk away," she told herself. "It's not worth it." But Madison wasn't finished. "Look at this hair," she said, reaching out to touch Eleanor's long locks. "When's the last time you washed it? It's probably crawling with lice." Eleanor jerked away from the touch, fire flashing in her dark eyes for just a moment. Madison caught it. "Oh, the little mouse has some fight in her," she laughed. "How amusing." From that day forward, Eleanor became their favorite target. They would accidentally knock books from her hands in the hallway, make loud comments about her clothes when she passed their table in the cafeteria, and spread rumors about her family being illegal immigrants. Eleanor endured it all with silent dignity, even as the harassment escalated. The gym teacher, Coach Williams, pretended not to notice when the girls forgot to include Elena in team sports. The hallway monitors conveniently looked the other way when Madison's crew surrounded Elena at her locker. Even some teachers seemed to view her as an acceptable casualty in the high school ecosystem. "Why don't you just fight back?" Eleanor asked herself as she lay in bed each night, replaying the day's humiliations. She could easily handle all 3 girls without breaking a sweat. But Uncle Miguel's voice always answered, "A warrior's strength comes from protecting the weak, not becoming the oppressor." The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon in late October. Eleanor was eating lunch alone in the courtyard, enjoying a rare moment of peace when Madison and her friends approached. The courtyard was relatively empty, except for a few scattered students who quickly looked away, unwilling to get involved. Well, what do we have here?" Madison said, sliding onto the bench across from Elena. "Eating all alone again, how pathetic." Elena continued eating her sandwich, refusing. Elena's jaw clenched, but she remained silent. "You know what I think?" Madison continued, pulling out her phone to record. "I think it's time for a makeover. That greasy hair is really bringing down the school's image." Before Eleanor could react, Chloe grabbed her from behind while Jessica produced a pair of scissors from her purse. Eleanor struggled, but they had positioned themselves to make it look like they were just playing around to any casual observer. "Hold still," Madison commanded, grabbing a handful of Elena's beautiful hair. "This is going to hurt." The scissors cut through Elena's hair with sickening efficiency. Chunks of her pride fell to the concrete like black snow. Other students had gathered now, some filming with their phones, but none intervening. In 30 seconds, Madison had destroyed what had taken Elena years to grow. "There," Madison said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. Much better. Now you look as ugly on the outside as you are on the inside. Elena sat frozen, her hand reaching up to touch the jagged remains of her hair. Tears she had held back for months finally spilled down her cheeks. The gathered crowd began to disperse, already moving on to the next entertainment. "Don't cry, little mouse," Madison cooed mockingly. "Hair grows back, assuming your family can afford shampoo." That evening, Elena stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. Her beautiful hair, her one vanity, was ruined. Uneven chunks stuck out at odd angles, making her look like she had been attacked by a lawnmower. Her mother had gasped when she walked in the door, immediately calling Uncle Miguel. "Mija," he said softly when he arrived, examining the damage. "Who did this to you?" Elena told him everything. Months of harassment, the racist comments, the teachers who looked away, the final humiliation. Miguel listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each detail. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" he asked finally. "You have the skills." "Because you taught me that fighting should be the last resort," Elena replied, "that a warrior protects others." Miguel was quiet for a long moment. Then he placed his hands on her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "Mija, sometimes the person who needs protecting is yourself. There's a difference between being a bully and refusing to be a victim. What happened to you today, that was assault. Those girls need to learn that actions have consequences." He drove her to his barber friend, who managed to salvage her hair into a short, edgy cut that actually looked stunning. As Elena looked at her reflection, she saw something different in her eyes. The meek, frightened girl was gone. In her place stood someone who had finally had enough. Monday morning arrived like a storm front. Elena walked through the hallways of Riverside High with her head held high for the first time in months. Her new haircut drew stares and whispers, but she no longer cared about blending in. She was done being invisible. Madison was holding court at her usual table in the cafeteria when Elena entered. The popular girl's eyes immediately locked onto her victim, and a cruel smile spread across her face. "Well, look who got a real haircut," Madison announced loudly. "Too bad it can't fix that face." Elena walked directly to Madison's table, her movement fluid and purposeful. The cafeteria began to quiet as students sensed something different about the dynamic. "We need to talk," Elena said simply, her voice carrying a new authority. Madison laughed. "The little mouse wants to talk. How adorable. What could you possibly have to say to me?" "You're going to apologize," Elena said calmly, "to me and to every other student you've tormented this year." The cafeteria was dead silent now. Madison's friends exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to this unprecedented challenge to their leader's authority. Madison stood up slowly, her smile turning vicious. "Or what? You'll cry on me? Run to your mommy? Or I'll make you apologize," Elena replied, her voice still eerily calm. Madison's face flushed red with anger. "You little bitch," she snarled, drawing back her hand to slap Elena. Elena moved with lightning speed, catching Madison's wrist mid-swing and applying just enough pressure to make her gasp in pain. The popular girl tried to pull away, but Elena's grip was like iron. "That was your choice," Elena said quietly. What happened next would be talked about for years at Riverside High. Madison threw a wild punch with her free hand, which Elena easily ducked. Using Madison's own momentum, Elena swept her legs and guided her to the ground with a basic judo throw. Madison hit the floor hard, the wind knocked out of her. Jessica rushed forward to help her friend, but Elena was ready. A simple arm drag sent Jessica stumbling into a nearby table, scattering lunch trays everywhere. Chloe took one look at her fallen friends and backed away, hands raised in surrender. Elena stood over Madison, who was struggling to catch her breath. The entire cafeteria stared in stunned silence. "I don't want to hurt you," Elena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "But I won't let you hurt me anymore either. You can choose to keep this going, or you can learn to treat people with respect." Madison tried to get up, rage overriding her better judgment. "You think you're tough?" she wheezed. "I'll destroy you for this." Elena sighed and shook her head. Madison lunged forward awkwardly, trying to tackle Elena around the waist. Elena stepped aside and applied a gentle but effective sleeper hold, cutting off the blood flow to Madison's brain just long enough to make her go limp. She lowered the unconscious girl to the ground carefully. "Someone should probably call the nurse," Elena announced to the room. "She'll be fine in a minute." The crowd finally found their voices, erupting in cheers and shocked commentary. Elena helped Jessica to her feet, checking to make sure she wasn't seriously hurt. "Are we done here?" Elena asked the remaining members. Of Madison's crew, they nodded frantically, too shocked to speak. Principal Martinez arrived with security just as Madison was beginning to stir. Elena expected to be dragged to the office, possibly expelled, but something unexpected happened. Instead of condemning her, students began speaking up. Madison started it, called out a sophomore who had been eating nearby. "She's been bullying Eleanor all year," added another student. "They cut her hair last week," shouted someone else. "I have it on video." Within minutes, a chorus of voices was detailing Madison's reign of terror. Students who had been too afraid to speak up individually found courage in numbers. Principal Martinez looked around the room, finally seeing what had been happening under his nose all along. The investigation that followed revealed months of documented harassment, including the video Madison herself had taken of cutting Elena's hair. While Elena received a brief suspension for fighting, Madison and her friends faced much more serious consequences. Jessica and Chloe were suspended for 2 weeks and required to attend anger management counseling. Madison, as the ringleader, was expelled and faced potential assault charges. Elena's return to school was met with something she had never experienced before: respect. Students who had ignored her before now nodded in acknowledgement as she passed. Some even approached to thank her, sharing their own stories of Madison's cruelty. The girl who had once eaten lunch alone now found herself surrounded by students who wanted to sit with her. Elena was polite, but selective, choosing to spend time with other quiet students who had been overlooked by the social hierarchy. 2 weeks after the cafeteria incident, Elena was surprised to find Madison waiting by her locker. The formerly popular girl looked different, humbled, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. "I wanted to apologize," Madison said quietly, not meeting Elena's eyes. "What I did to you, what I did to a lot of people, it was wrong." Elena studied her former tormentor carefully. Madison looked smaller somehow, diminished by the loss of her social status and the consequences of her actions. "Why?" Elena asked simply. Madison was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was scared," she finally admitted. "Scared that if I wasn't on top, I'd end up on the bottom. So I hurt people to make myself feel powerful." Elena nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now, I know what it feels like to be powerless," Madison replied. "To have everyone turn against you. I'm sorry, Elena, I'm truly sorry." Elena looked into Madison's eyes and saw genuine remorse there. "Apology accepted," she said finally. "But being sorry isn't enough. You need to do better." Madison nodded, eagerly. I am. I've been volunteering at the community center, working with kids who are being bullied. I want to make things right." As Eleanor watched Madison walk away, she felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. The girl who had once seemed like a monster was revealed to be just another scared teenager, lashing out at the world because she didn't know how else to cope. Uncle Miguel had been right. Sometimes protecting yourself was the same as protecting others. By refusing to remain a victim, Elena had given courage to dozens of other students who were suffering in silence. She had shown them that bullies only had as much power as you gave them. Elena touched her short hair, which had grown out into a stylish bob. She liked it better than her old long hair. It felt like the external representation of who she had become: stronger, more confident, unafraid to take up space in the world. The transformation at Riverside High was gradual but undeniable. Teachers began paying closer attention to student interactions. Bystanders who had once looked away started speaking up when they witnessed bullying. The school implemented new policies and programs focused on creating a more inclusive environment. Elena became something of a reluctant hero to the underdog students. She never sought the attention, but she didn't shy away from helping others who were being picked on either. Her calm confidence and proven ability to stand up for herself made potential bullies think twice before targeting anyone in her vicinity. Months later, as Elena prepared for graduation, she reflected on how much had changed. She was no longer the invisible girl in the back of the classroom. She was class vice president, captain of the girls' self-defense club she had started, and had been accepted to several prestigious universities on academic scholarships. Most importantly, she had learned that strength wasn't about the ability to hurt others. It was about the courage to protect yourself and those who couldn't protect themselves. She had discovered that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be a victim. The girl who had once hidden behind her hair now stood tall and proud, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had learned the most important lesson of all: respect is something you command, not something you beg for. And at Riverside High, everyone learned that appearances could be deceiving, and that the quiet ones were often the ones you should never underestimate.